Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to the 2Fit podcast, hosted by the 2Fit guys, Jake and Josh. Now, 2Fit, by definition, is actively pursuing a state of health and well-being beyond perceived limitations. So, if you're looking to push the boundaries of performance mentally, physically, and everywhere in between, then you have come to the right place. On the 2Fit podcast, we will be interviewing and having fireside chats with renowned experts from doctors and strength and conditioning coaches to athletes and entrepreneurs. Our goal is to extract tools and tricks of the trade that you can implement whether you're a world-class athlete, weekend warrior, entrepreneur, or grinding out the 8 to 5, all in order to assist you on your journey to becoming 2Fit.
All right, guys, welcome back to the 2Fit podcast. We're sitting down today with a man named Wes Kennedy, who is a former special operator in the Canadian Special Forces, and now he runs the Elite Training Program, which is what he founded and is the head coach there, where he takes boys and turns them into men. Basically gets them ready for pre-selection into any special forces operation, whether that be U.S., Canada, or abroad. And Wes, we're just excited for this interview, and thanks for sitting down with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be on the show.
Cool. So just for people out there who might not know you, have read your stuff, kind of give us just a little bit of your CV and your background and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, totally. So I didn't want to go to university after high school and join the Canadian Armed Forces. I was lucky enough to pick combat engineer as my initial trade upon entry. Did 3 years as a combat engineer, did a tour overseas in Afghanistan, and then when I got back, Canada had recently been standing up a new unit, the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. So I did their selection phase, got picked up for course, was successful there, and went on to do another 5 years in that unit. And then I decided it was time for something new and took my passion for fitness that I developed in the military with my background in the special operations community and created elite training programs. And our primary focus there, while we work with a variety of athletes, our primary focus is helping special operations candidates arrive as prepared as possible on selection. So that could be Navy SEAL, SFAS, Commandos, JTF2, CSOR, as well as other various elite military units such as clearance divers, pararescue jumpers, air combat controllers, and the like.
So what's the average age of the candidates you see?
Oh, it's quite a wide range. I guess in terms of just the candidates for those units, anywhere between 19 and 32.
So this could even be guys that are in different units that want to qualify for an SF unit, and they're looking for extra training.
Some guys, qualify for a special ops unit. So some guys are, they contact me before they even get in the military, and they want to start training early. Some guys have been in the military for 5, 6, 7 years, and they're just done with the trade that they're in and they want something new, and then we start working together at that point in preparing them for selection.
So what are kind of the mechanics of that? I mean, what does that look like, that process? So if somebody wants to enter your program, what's step one?
Well, step one, I usually always direct people towards our 3-part video series on building the ultimate special operations athlete. They can find that at elitetrainingprograms.com/specops videos, and or our webinar on the most common training mistakes I see guys making, and that can be found at elitetrainingprograms.com/specops mistakes. And I get people to watch that first because it'll just give them a much better idea as to what we do, my beliefs behind training, and my beliefs behind prepping for selection. And then at that point, they have an option to apply for a strategy session. And during that strategy session, we sit down together. We have an hour together. We go over, what's working for them, what's not working for them, We try and give them some recommendations around their training, give them some recommendations as to what they're taking in for nutrition. And then at that point, it's really up to them. If we both feel it's a good fit, then we'll take a look at working together over time. For the one-on-one stuff that I do with Spec Ops candidates, we always start with a couple weeks of baseline testing. So in the fitness world, it's becoming more and more common now, but in the past, a lot of times people just get plugged into these generic programs. They get plugged into group classes. They just get plugged into a system without any initial assessment. And if there's no initial assessment to determine where they're starting, whatever you give them after that's going to be subpar. So we always start people off, get really clear as to what their strengths, their weaknesses are in terms of various lifts, their aerobic ability, their anaerobic capacity, their power, their strength, etc. And that really allows us to start them off exactly where they need to start. It allows us to meet the client where they're at. And then it's just an ongoing process. It's individualized programming, nutrition, it's staying in contact with their coach, it's that mentorship piece in getting their minds ready for what they're about to embark on. And then the process it's a little bit different for everybody, but really based on exactly what that person needs.
So I know we'd love to dive into the mental and the physical aspects of kind of the training for this elite training, and reading some of your stuff on T-Nation, which we'll link to all that in the show notes, as well as your website and sources. When starting from scratch, when you have a guy come, whether he's 18 or 32, what's the number one training flaw that you hear from them? So you ask them, what have you been doing to prepare? What does your training currently look like? And from your point of view and your methodologies, what is the number one thing you hear that you go, man, we got to change that?
Number one, well, in the webinar I mentioned, there's 12 of the most common training mistakes I see. If I had to pick one, let me think.
It could be a few. I mean, we can definitely list them out kind of in a rank almost.
So I'd say if I had to pick three, one of them would be focusing too much energy on training for the PT test. So too much focus on training to get to selection and not enough focus on getting through selection. And for the listeners that are unfamiliar with the process, in order just to get to selection, there's some interviewing processes, there's some recommendations from your unit chain of command, and there's a physical, there's a PT test as well. And the PT test generally tests for aerobic power, either running or swimming, or a rucking component, and strength endurance across push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups. So while they're important and from a logistical standpoint, it works for the military, it's only a small component of the physical demands that they're going to experience on selection. So that would be number one. Number two would be failure to include any sort of mini selection in their training program. I think it's really important to include a 2 or 3 day stint where the athlete is training / testing 4 to 5 times a day and getting used to that real high volume of work and intensity with little sleep that they may be experiencing on selection. Of course, that comes after the training and the preparation, so they don't injure themselves doing that, but I think it's really important at some point to put themselves through that. If they can put themselves through that, it'll be a lot easier when they have somebody watching over them and telling them to do it. And number three, I don't know if these are in any order, top 3 out of the 12, but one that's really interesting is underestimating the importance of grip strength endurance training. You can take an exceptionally fit guy, if he has poor grip strength, come selection, he's going to screw up. He's going to screw up on what's expected of him. as a tactical athlete, there's almost always something in your hands. There's either a rifle in their hands. They're either dragging something. They're either picking up ammo. There's always something in their hands. They're always doing something. If there's not something in their hands, they're probably doing something wrong. And so in training, there needs to be an appropriate training stimulus to prepare them for that, to prepare them to grab an ammo crate and walk for 3 kilometers straight and not have their forearms feel like they're going to fall off. I think that's a huge one that guys don't think about in their training and can really make a difference come selection time.
So how, on that specific topic, how do you build up to that? I mean, is that just a bunch of farmers carries, just holding the bar? How do you just grab it and try to walk 3K?
Yeah, so we like everything, we always start off with a bit of testing. So we have different tests. We have a 200 meter dumbbell farmer's walk for max possible weight. We have a one arm hang from the rings for time. We have hang from a pull-up bar for time. And then based on the scores they get with that, or another one would be a max double overhand non-hook grip deadlift. Based on the scores we get from that, then we just start training that weakness if needed. And that comes in a whole bunch of different formats based on the individual and where they are in the training plan. But it's important that they start with the testing first, get really clear on what their numbers are, and then implement that into the training plan over time in a progressive nature.
So, Wes, what would be some ways that like our listeners can what can they take away, maybe a couple of things in their training, like in the gym and outside the gym, to increase their grip strength? I think that's so important just for everyday life, for just anybody, even if they're working at the office, just training your grip strength. What are some of the easy ways, or maybe not easy, but that they can go about increasing that strength?
Yeah, good question. I'm always apprehensive to answer these with a one and done kind of solution, because it always goes back to the individual.
Sure.
A couple things I'd preface the answer with is, one, it's super easy to overtrain grip strength. You got to be really mindful as to where you put it into the training week. All the little muscles in the hand, they get burnt out. It's hard on the nervous system if you're doing heavy weights, and you got to think about what sort of lifts and what sort of training you're doing around that exercise.
So on that note, is that something you would train separately, or you would train after your training? So let's say you're doing heavy deadlifts that day, you might train grip strength after. Or and maybe the heavy deadlifts is a portion of that grip strength. Maybe we just do more, maybe when we're doing single leg work, we're doing more dumbbell work as opposed to front, having a barbell in the front rack or the back, so that there's more stimulus on the grip strength. If we're talking maybe some specific grip strength exercises, say we do the 200 meter max dumbbell farmer's carry and the individual gets 50 pounds per hand. I'd like to see it a heck of a lot closer to about 90 pounds per hand, ideally. So say they get 50 pounds per hand, maybe in the training, one of the exercises is 100 feet dumbbell farmer's carry, rest 60 seconds times 5 to 6 rounds. And then the next week we'd increase it to 110 feet, and then the next week 120 feet, or we'd increase the load, but something progressive so that the intensity or the work volume is increasing week over week.
Now, do you see all these testing procedures you're doing? Did people send these videos into you? Because everything you're doing is online, right? Did you ever meet with people in person? What's that look like?
Yeah, everything's online. So once in a while, we'll meet with people in person. If they come into Victoria, I'll come and we'll set up a time and we'll do some one-on-one stuff. We can always get some good data from that we can't get online. But everything can, pretty much everything can be done online to prepare guys for selection. So they'll send videos in when it's either a test and we want to see what their best score is, or if it's a new movement, and I just want to make sure that their form is dialed in, and they'll take a video, upload it to their Google Drive folder that we share, and then I'll give them feedback on that every week or so.
That kind of brings me back to your selection process, because you're basically you're responsible for a pre-selection before these guys even go to their selection for whatever special operations that may be. And I think that's such a great model, just figuring out if it's a good fit for the both of you. We actually did a podcast with they run a business out of Michigan, and they make custom hybrid pools, and basically they turn down 90% of their business that comes to them because they only want to work with people that they can fall in love with more each time. They want to work with people who, are just going to let them operate the way that they want to operate. And so I just want to figure out, what do you look for in these candidates? And do you sit down with somebody and just have to tell them, like, hey man, I don't think this is right for you?
Yeah, and I don't think special operations is right for everybody. A couple things come to mind. One, we've had clients where I love working with them. We work together. We've worked together for 2 years, and about halfway through that, they realized that selection was just a means to an end for them. They didn't actually want to do that, and now they're working towards becoming a CEO of a large company where they can actually affect some meaningful change in the world. And that's one person's case, and we've had a lot of discussions for that one individual, and we know that that's the best fit for him. So some guys will hear that and they'll say, oh great, he talked himself out of selection. Well, under your premise that everybody should be doing selection that says they want to do selection, sure, I guess he talked himself out of it. It just wasn't the thing that he wanted in the first place. Right. So I think that's a very beneficial conversation to have. It saves people a whole bunch of wasted time and heartache, and now they can go put their energy where their strengths are and where it's really meant to be.
Yeah, so you've been around operators, for over a decade now, and you've lived that life. So, what are some of the things that you look for in a candidate?
Right. Yeah. And I kind of got off track there. So the other piece to that answer, there's a few things. I'm kind of just trying to get a feel for the person on the call. There's not a specific checklist that I go through. I'm looking for somebody that's humble, that's willing to learn, that shows that they can follow basic instructions. Look, it's not rocket science what we do. If you follow the steps I give you, you're going to get a heck of a lot fitter over the next year. Far fitter than you would jumping around from blog post to blog post and piecemealing stuff together in your spare time over on top of all your life responsibilities and work responsibilities. You're going to get fitter, but you need to do what I tell you to do to get there, and you need to do the work. So one of the things I look for is just, can the person fill out an assessment questionnaire and track their food for 3 days prior to our initial strategy session? That's a huge indication to me as to whether they're going to be a good fit for what we do, and if they're going to actually get any results out of it. Because I don't really enjoy working with people that don't do what I tell them to do and don't get any results. It sucks. I hate watching it. It's painful. I enjoy working with the guys that they take it on. They just hit their training day in and day out. They take on their nutrition. It doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat. We're all on our own journey and learning process, but they continually strive and move the needle forward.
And I'd imagine it's almost easier to tell people like that who just don't want to put in the effort, like, hey man, this isn't right for you. But I'm sure you also have those cases where people are putting in 100% effort, 110 sometimes, and their physical fitness just isn't there.
Yeah, but then it's just it's just a time game.
Right.
Their physical fitness might not be there, and that's fine. Everybody starts where they're at. A lot of guys will send me in their food log for 3 days with a whole bunch of, well, it was like this because of that, and kind of making excuses. And I tell them, look, this isn't here to impress me. I don't have any judgment around where you're at. I ate like crap for years and years and years when I was growing up. I still eat like crap sometimes, and there's no judgment around it. It's just a starting point so that we can start moving the needle forward.
Right.
So how long is that? How long do you typically kind of set out for a candidate to prepare for his course?
Good question. I get this asked a lot, usually from the candidate. How long until I'm going to be ready? And I always answer it with two things. One, it depends on where you're at after we finish your first 2 weeks of baseline testing, and I always have a much, much better idea at that point. And number two, how consistent are you going to be with your nutrition and sleep and training? One of the most common training mistakes I lay out in that webinar is failure to train for more than a year. So most people, there's a lot of guys that come to me and they say, hey, okay, selection's in 3 months. And there's a handful of people that I've worked with who have selection in 4 months. But I preface that with some questions around their fitness. What's their 100 max deadlift? What's their best 5 kilometer or 3 mile run? I get a kind of a quick snapshot of how fit they are. And if the guy tells me, look, I deadlift 450 pounds, I can run 3 miles in 20 minutes. Okay, then we kind of go and explore some other metrics and see if it's actually realistic. And there's a couple of guys that do come to me where it is realistic. They just need to get sport specific at this point for the next 4 months, and it works out for them. Most guys, that's not the case. Most guys that tell me, hey, I want to do this in 4 months, I tell them, look, it's not realistic. You deadlift 250 pounds, your 3 mile run is 30 minutes, you don't have any experience with alpining or walking around with a rucksack, your swimming is self-admittedly poor. You can't possibly hope with the very best programming in the world, with a team of the leading strength and conditioning coaches, hope to be ready in 4 months. The body cannot adapt that quickly. And then we just have that honest conversation and we set some realistic timelines. And if they're on board with it, then we can move forward. And if not, we're probably not the best fit for them because we're not going to lie to them.
So we've kind of been flirting around this topic this whole time, but let's just go ahead and dive in. What is your philosophy on training in general and tactical fitness, and kind of what is lacking in the tactical fitness space right now?
I think that's a great question. I think what's really prevalent in the tactical fitness space is guys that have been where these guys want to go. So they've done selection, they've been an operator, yet they've never really got into the weeds on how to do program design, how to do nutrition, right? They either lucked out and got really fit over time, or they're just genetic freaks, which a lot of, selection weeds out non-genetic freaks pretty easily. If you're a genetic freak, you can kind of easily get through selection, and then they turn around and they sell fitness training, but it's not really based around the individual. It's a suck it up, buttercup, pick up the sandbag, go hit the punching bag, do high intensity interval training, more, and there's not any real progression to it. There's no initial testing, there's no assessment, there's no ongoing assessment. It just doesn't work
for the sake of grueling work.
It works great for guys that are genetic freaks, and you can just throw anything at them and they're going to adapt. It doesn't work for the other 90-95% of the population.
So how are you and elite training programs combating that?
Start off with an assessment.
Yeah.
That's I think with most trainers, the best thing they can do to upgrade the prescriptions that they're giving to their clients is to start with an assessment, continue to assess over time, get really clear on what the focus for each training cycle is, and then continue to gather data. We're always gathering data and coming up with new tests so that we can further break down where the weak areas are with that athlete, right? Great. We do a 5K run and a 10K run. How can we further simulate what people are going to find on selection? How can we further simulate that mental toughness aspect? Maybe now we do, one of the other tests we came up with was 3 5-kilometer runs, each one as fast as possible with 10 minutes rest in between. So you go as hard as possible. Ideally you don't know that there's 2 and 3 coming up, so sometimes we'll set it up with one of their friends and let them know, hey, this person's going to tell you what your workout is, and then they run 5K as hard as they can. They get 10 minutes rest and they get told, okay, you're doing it again. And then they get 10 more minutes rest, and they get told they're doing it again. So it's constantly coming up with different tests that are going to best simulate what they're going to actually experience on selection, or best simulate what we need to test for. And that doesn't mean, hey, on all these selections, there's a 5, doesn't mean this is actually on selection. But if you just start to think like, what kind of things are going to show up in combat? You get into a firefight and you have to go balls out for an hour, and then it stops. Well, you don't know if something's going to happen again, so you got to go balls out for another hour, and then it stops. Then you go balls out for another hour. So it's just kind of thinking logically about what are the characteristics of selection, what are the characteristics of course, what are the characteristics of actual combat, and then try to come up with testers that simulate that, so we can better set up their training to prepare them for that.
And Wes, so when you say selection, just for the people out there, you're talking about the specific course for which they're going. So that could be BUDS, that could be Ranger School. Is that, when you say selection, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, it's different for all the special operations units out there. Here in Canada, for CSOR or JTF2, they do approximately like a 1-week selection phase. So they go somewhere for a week, really high volume of work, constantly under assessment, little sleep, little food, and then if they make it through that, if they don't quit for one, and they perform adequately or they perform exceptionally, then they'll be picked up to go on to a 6, 9, 12-month, 18-month course. And at the end of that, they're badged as a Navy SEAL or as a Special Forces operator, etc. And then they get posted to a unit where they do that job.
So no, Jake and I, we've talked about, we'd love to go out to like Kokoro camp, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Do you ever recommend potential candidates do things like that? Weekend getaways or a week getaway at a facility like that to simulate training?
Yeah, definitely. I think it can be useful if they're ready for it, if they've done the training to lead up to it. I haven't experienced Kokoro camp myself. I do know some of the trainers that work on it. But I think it's useful. Same reason why we put in a mini selection for the guys, but I think that even amps it up even more. I mean, a Kokoro camp, if it's what the piece I'm thinking of, it's a couple days where it's a mock selection.
Right.
I think that's super useful for sure.
For everybody out, the Kokoro camp is like Mark Devine's SEAL Fit program.
Yep.
You go out for like 3 days, and it's basically a simulation of BUDS where little sleep. You're in, you'll meet everybody from different walks of life to even high school students that are out there to prepare, and to CEOs like you mentioned earlier, and that's just basically a kind of a simulation of Hell Week, which happens at BUDS. Little sleep, lots of exercise, and they beat you up pretty hard, and then you come back stronger. So that's the idea.
Yep, definitely.
So Wes, what I'm picking up from you is that if people are looking to be a Special Forces operator, we really want to build up our aerobic base first, as well as our strength endurance. But I've also noticed, I know you have a couple of the OPEX certifications and CrossFit's certifications, the strongman and the level 1. So my question is, where does CrossFit and kind of the high intensity training come into play? Because I know me and Josh both go to a CrossFit gym here, and we got a handful of guys. We live in a college town, and so we got a handful of kids here that are looking to go into Special Forces, and they're really hitting the CrossFit, scene pretty strong. And so kind of what would be your advice to them? And how does the CrossFit scene kind of fit into all this?
Yeah, great question. I love talking about this. So, and I train a couple a few guys and girls prepping for CrossFit as well. I think CrossFit's a great sport. I don't agree with it as a training program for the masses. I don't even know what CrossFit even means as a training program. Do whatever for however long you want, mixed up, and who knows what you're going to get. That's just anything. That's not a training, methodology. It's just called anything. But I think it's a great sport. I love I love competing in it. A few years ago, I love training athletes to compete in it. It poses a whole bunch of really unique challenges for the coach to prepare them for the unknown. There's a couple big differences between CrossFit and military selection. In CrossFit, actually, I might want to cut this out. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, that's fine. We can always edit anything on the back end. So.
Yeah. So in CrossFit, activity is largely anaerobic in nature. Majority of events are under 20 minutes. It involves high repetition, vertical pressing, pulling, high repetition bending and squatting movements as a major focus. The competition is either between one event to several events over a period of 3 days. The equipment you're using is mostly stuff you'd find in a gym, and there's a high focus on barbell work. In a military selection scenario, activity is largely aerobic, not anaerobic. Most events are significantly longer than 20 minutes. It focuses on high repetition push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups. You're training for an event, the selection phase lasting 1 to 3 weeks, not just a couple of days. Most of the equipment will be military in nature, including your rucksack and other odd objects. And there's a high focus on swimming, running, and rucking, not barbells. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff we can get into on this, right? I'm not saying you're not going to train with a barbell. All of my tactical athletes train with barbells. I'm not saying you're not going to do any anaerobic work, but largely for tactical athletes, I just want them to have a really, really big aerobic base. The demands of the job in combat don't actually necessitate any need for a well-developed anaerobic glycolytic system. In fact, the bigger their aerobic base is, the less likely they're going to need to tap into that anaerobic glycolytic system, which is very finite in nature, right? If you're in a combat environment and you do tap into that, either because you're not in very good shape or you don't have a big enough aerobic base and things get intense, once you do tap into that, it takes a lot longer to recover from it. And I don't really want that to happen to guys in a combat environment. So there's just a lot of things that are different about, they're two completely different, let's call them both sports. They're two different sports. One's CrossFit, one's training for selection or combat, and they're two completely different sports, and they need two completely different programs to prepare for them.
So is it a misconception that, special forces operators are actually doing CrossFit, or is that just kind of what you're saying is lacking in the tactical fitness community right now, is that people are really focusing on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I have a cousin who was in the Army, and whenever he was deployed, he would say the Navy SEALs would show up with their boombox on their shoulder and in their wife beaters and shirts off and everything, and then they would go to the camp gym and basically just take over, and they were doing just all sorts of CrossFit stuff. And I've also heard it from other people, and even the kids at the gym are saying, they're getting into CrossFit because they're looking to go into SF, and that they hear that this is the best way to get in shape for it. So my question is that a misconception that operators are actually doing CrossFit, or is that basically what you're saying is a fallacy of the training that's going on right now in the tactical fitness community?
Yeah, I personally believe it's a fallacy. I don't think that it's the best way to prepare. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did, once I finished selection and finished course, I trained for CrossFit once I was in. It's going to get you in shape you're going to get fitter. I mean, if you're a beginner, you can really throw anything at a beginner and they're going to adapt and improve their fitness. But if we're looking at what's the best program to do, I don't think that that's it. It's training for different things. Keep in mind too, I'll have guys that come to me and they're not going to do selection for 4 years, right? And we work together for 4 years. And I also don't really want them to just train for selection for 4 years. It's kind of crappy style of training. Like, guys don't want to carry a ruck once a week, for 4 years, and they don't really need to.
Right.
And so for a lot of guys, I'll actually say, hey, maybe why don't we just train you for CrossFit for 2-3 years and prep for the opens each year. And, maybe you get to regionals on the third year. And then the last year we'll switch gears and we'll train you specifically for selection phase. And so what happens then? They're really good at moving. They have great pacing. They know their engine across their aerobic system. They can train their anaerobic glycolytic system well, their anaerobic lactic system. They're so good movers. They know their engine. They're strong. They have a big aerobic base, and then we just change things about a year out. We start doing a lot more single leg work. We start doing a lot more push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. We start doing more rucking. We start doing more endurance training and accumulating that over that last year. So, I mean, it has its place, and it's a great sport. It's fun. But people just need to kind of step back and look at it logically from what the demands of each sport are and then decide from there. Rather than look at the marketing hype on anything and say, oh, well, that must be it because look at these pictures of the results they're getting. So we'll just go with that. That looks cool. And it is. It's a cool sport. It's hard not to get hooked on CrossFit. It's fun. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Wes, we kind of have a funny story. So this, what you're saying about building up this aerobic capacity, it's kind of funny because we have a young guy at the gym he's in a Ranger training unit through ROTC at A&M, and he just started CrossFit a few months ago, and as you know, the CrossFit Open is going on, which is where it's a 5-week deal where people do a different workout every week, and then the top 20 in each region go to regionals, and then the top 3 or 5 or whatever go to the games. Well, he actually had to be convinced to do the CrossFit Open because he didn't think he was going to be good enough to even put his name in the Open, which in each region there's like 10,000, 12,000 people. And he's an absolute beast. He's been training for Ranger school for years. I mean, through high school, the guy's just on a different level. So he does the CrossFit Open, and currently he's 60th in the region, his first year doing it. And everybody's around the gym going, are you kidding me? Because all the trainers, all the coaches, they're busting their balls every week, all year, every year. And he comes in out of nowhere. He's a sophomore at A&M right now and just dominating. And it's like you look at him, though, it's not a surprise. Jake and I have talked about it. It's like, well, look at the guy's background of what he's built, in his training. He came in last week and he was like, man, I'm kind of tired. I had to go to San Antonio and I rucked 45 miles. And he came in and finished first place on the workout. And that's just, it's what you're preaching. I mean, we're seeing it firsthand right now. So, yeah, it's
100%.
Definitely hits home.
Yeah, me and Josh are currently training for our first Ironman, which is coming up in a little less than a month. And I noticed on your website there, it says you came in third in one of the Ironmans. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this isn't a traditional Ironman, as you may know it. It's called the Petawawa Ironman that takes place in Petawawa, Ontario.
Yeah, so you had a ruck on, is that right?
Pardon me?
You had a ruck on during this?
Yeah, so it's essentially the race starts, I think, 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And it starts, you have, military boots, combat pants, T-shirt, and a 40-pound rucksack. So it's 32 kilometers with a rucksack. And then you pick up a canoe and portage that for 4 kilometers, put the canoe in the water, canoe for 8, and then get out with your ruck and run for the final 6 kilometers. So it's 50 kilometers altogether.
Wow. It's impressive.
Yeah, it was fun. Cool. I actually didn't think I would ever do it. And I was training with my coach, and he had me, and I kind of thought about it, and then I said no. But in that week, he had me do an 80-minute easy zone 1 run with a 20-pound weight vest. And I threw it on, and I thought, you know what? This is actually, I can do this a little smoother than I thought. And so I said, let's go for it. And we did a 4-month build up to that, where we just progressively increased the volume. And I remember about a month out from the race, he had me do a 32-kilometer run with a ruck. And, and it was like, I did it in, I think, 3 hours and 20 minutes or something. Jeez. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I never, ever thought I would be able to run that far. And it just goes to show what a progressive training plan can do, where you go from, no, that's not happening, and getting shin splints and cramping up and hurting, and then just being able to run the 32K, taking off the ruck and feeling great.
Wes, it brings up a question that I have. So in Jake and I's training, we kind of adhere to the philosophy of more sprint work, fewer long, grueling runs, right?
Just
or bikes, or
the minimal
swims.
effective dose.
Yeah,
basically.
and where do you fall on that scale? Like, so a guy, even if he's training for a half marathon, right, 13-mile run or so, in his town. I mean, what we do is we will do a long swim, a long bike, a long run once a week. The other part of that training, we still, lift and stuff, but the other part of that training is sprint work. So we may go do 100-meter repeats at the track, 1-mile repeats with a 5-minute rest. Same thing in the pool, 25-meter sprints. And then you hear some people, their training is all build up. So the first week they may run 3 miles a couple times. The next week they'll push it to 4.5 or so on. Where do you fall kind of on that scale of tackling an endurance event?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are in the training cycle and where your weak points are. But yeah, I mean, I think I would, when I trained for that, I did a long, easy ruck walk once a week. I built up from an hour to doing about a 5 or 6 hour walk near the end. I had another workout where I would do a swim, bike, run, and that built up to, I think, I did a 20-minute swim, a 2-hour bike, and then a 2-hour run, which ended up being a half marathon at the end. That was kind of the end of that near the race. But then there was also like aerobic power work where I would do, say, 90 seconds run at a percentage of effort, walk 90 seconds times 15, making sure that all of those run times were equal, right? And that's a really good way to know that you're still training in your aerobic zone. Whereas if you're doing, a 1 mile run with, I'd have more than 5 minutes rest. That sounds rough. Yeah, I guess that would be the same. 1 mile run with 5 minutes rest. That's kind of a real high-end aerobic power work. Whereas a 100-meter sprint, you're training your anaerobic alactic system. So it's kind of just going back and figuring out, okay, what energy system am I actually training? And as you get closer, the 100-meter sprints aren't really going to help you very much with an endurance race. That's maybe stuff you're going to do really early on in your training evolution. But getting 1-2 months close, I wouldn't really put any effort in that space.
Sure.
Let's dive into a little bit of the nutrition aspect. So what's your personal nutrition look like, and is that the same thing that you preach to your athletes as well? Everything's individualized. My personal nutrition right now, I'm trying to lose about 5 pounds and have a 6-pack. I'm not in the military anymore. I don't have to run. I just have to look good on the beach. And that's honestly really all I care about right now. There are beaches in Canada?
There is here in Victoria. The only one in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lucky
Lucky me, exactly. But yeah, so my nutrition right now is completely different than what my nutrition recommendation would be for this other guy I'm working for that's 3 months out from SFAS, from Special Forces Assessment and Selection. Right. Mine might be 185 grams of protein, 180 grams of carbs, and 90 grams of fat, and his is 110 grams of fat, 430 grams of carbs, and 185 grams of protein.
So Wes, we have a lot of people in the military and veterans listen to the show, and I've read some of your articles about why do you think it's so much easier on the outside or when you're training to kind of get the nutrition you need and the tools you need to perform for mobility, for nutrition, whatever it may be, than it is when you're in the actual military? Because it seems like with all the tools at their disposal, it's way behind. And we've heard, Dr. Kirk Parsley talk a lot about this. I know he does a lot on the sleep side with veterans and special forces. But it just seems like it's...
MREs aren't the most nutritious thing out there.
It's so far behind.
Yep, definitely. I've had a few conversations with Kirk. Great guy too. Great information that he's putting out around sleep. I think the military is behind. I worked with, this is a perfect story to illustrate just how far behind they are. And I think, they're coming slowly, and I hate to point fingers, but I also really like to highlight some issues that can be easily fixed, because they are easily fixable. There's not it's not rocket science. It's not overly difficult to change what you're putting out on soldiers and on soldiers' plates in the meal hall. So we worked with the Canadian Forces Clearance Divers course a couple of years back, and I did their programming remotely for them for a year. We kind of hit this with a two-pronged approach. One, we did the program design, and the goal was to get them sub 14-minute 1 kilometer swim with fins. So you basically get on the plaque. You basically get an award if you get under 14 minutes while you're on course. There's about 25 guys every 2 years, and about one person gets on it every 2 years. So about 4% get on the plaque to get under 14 minutes. And our goal was to get everybody under 14 minutes. We were able to do 7 guys under 14 minutes, 5 under 14 and a half, and one guy broke the record at, I think, 12:52. Wow. On top of the program, on the other side was the nutrition piece. I had a good friend of mine, James Butler, who was still in the clearance divers at the time, and he started doing a lot of work with the kitchen there on the base and with the fitness coordinators on the base. And instead of getting the traditional box lunch with juice box and cookies and Nutri-Grain bars and kind of just junk, just a lot of sugar, they were able to start getting eggs and walnuts and broccoli and actual fuel that was going to support them in their goals. And the interesting thing is that initially when he went to went to make these changes, it wasn't really well received. They kind of said, hey, calories are calories. We can just give them a bag of sugar, and this is actually from, the guy in charge of these kind of decisions, calories are calories. And so it took a lot of work, and at the end of the day, it wasn't about what the food is. There's a certain monetary allotment for each person on each course, and it was just a matter of changing what was on the order. And yet, we continue to see the military make this other decision where, well, let's do the easy thing. It's been this way for years. No need to change it. And it's just simply got to change. I know the U.S. is going through a whole turnaround with that sort of stuff too. Instead of having the sponsored Pizza Hut and Burger King providing half the food, they're starting to make some changes there as well. And I think it'll be a huge leg up for their fitness and health over time.
Do you feel like some of that is unfortunate to say, but do you feel like some of that is motivated, the lack of change is motivated by government subsidies? And if they actually started, say, putting out you can label it whatever you want, but a paleo diet or just whole foods diet, right? If they started putting this out with the total opposite of your refined grains and refined sugars and processed foods, that it would look very contradictory to what the My Plate or the food pyramid has been for so long?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other great topic. Here in Canada, I think they just came out with an amazing that we have to have a congressional report to say our food guide is outdated, but we finally have that as well. So I would hope that the changes will come. I think the other issue is that if they do this, then they're not in line with the Canada Food Guide, and then if they say the Canada Food Guide isn't what it needs to be, now they need to turn around and actually tell people what they need to be eating. And our planet just can't sustain that. Like the government can't turn around and provide that. There's not enough agricultural space to do it. I mean, there's been studies like if you take all the land that can be used to raise crops, and you plant the most calorie dense crops in all those locations, you still don't actually have enough calories to sustain all the people on the planet. I mean, I don't know how much truth there is to that, but there is a food shortage. People starve every day, die from starvation in parts of the world. So I think it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And then now nobody wants to actually work towards it. They just say, you know what, if I do this, then we have to solve this bigger problem, and I don't want anything to do with that. Mm-hmm. And that's not the way to go.
It just seems like all the resources and all the money that go into companies like the Monsantos of the world, that all that resource could be used to find more sustainable ways of agriculture.
Yeah, totally. I think, yep.
Yeah. Just brings up kind of a crazy fact that I heard a couple months back, is that there's more people alive on the earth today than has ever lived previously. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot of people.
It's crazy.
Wes, staying on the nutrition side, is it shunned? Like, let's say that you have a guy gets in a team or a unit, right? And he was doing your training program, or at least he was plugged in and educated, right? And on nutrition and his recovery. And he goes in there and he takes his greens powder and his joint supplement and his fish oil. And is he looked at like kind of a weakling, or the other? They're like, are the guys too good for that almost mentality? And then again, what is allowed for you to bring? Like if you've been using things in your regimen before getting in, what is allowed for you to kind of maintain?
And are we talking like once guys are in these units?
Yes, yeah. So let's say that you had a whole supplement regimen during your training to get in, and then you get in and you kind of want to still keep using those things. Are you kind of shunned for wanting to use those things, or are you even allowed?
Yeah, so I think, I don't think people need nearly as many supplements as they take. I mean, half the time when guys come to me, one of the first things I do is tell them to stop taking some of the supplements they're taking, because it's a complete waste of money. I think things like a protein powder and a post-workout carbohydrate and maybe creatine and vitamin D and some, well-studied, proven supplements have their place. But for the most part, there's not a huge need over and above the whole foods or some very specific things for a specific issue for a specific person and their specific goals. But I do think there is a little bit of a culture. Like we would rather fitness shame somebody than fat shame them. These days, like we'd rather kind of point out, and I've had this experience where, and this just brings up a point about nutrition in the military. I'll go up for breakfast and say, hey, I'd like 5 eggs. Like I need some protein. I'd like 5 eggs, please. I can get 2 eggs, and then I can go order, go take out, sit down, and then come back around, get 2 more, and then go take it out and come back up and get another one each time waiting in line. But I can go out to the rest of the cafeteria where it's self-serve, and I can take 10 cookies, 3 pieces of cake, and a glass of chocolate milk and a Coke.
And then go comatose on your cot afterwards.
And so I'll ask for 5 eggs, and I'll get the 5 eggs again, 5 eggs. Great. That's part of the military culture. It's funny, like we razz each other. But nobody razzes each other because they're being a fatty fat and taking 6 cookies and 10 pieces of cake. Right? I mean, if it's that much, maybe we will. But that's like the cool, like I train hard and sleep little and eat like crap and I'm still fit. It's almost like an unspoken badge of honor. And it's unfortunate, but as long as that culture is prevalent, it's obvious why changes aren't actually being made.
Well, that kind of brings up a question I have, and this is just all hearsay and just rumors me and Josh have heard. There's no actual proof or evidence of this. But we've heard that there's been, kind of in the special operations community here in the U.S. that, some guys, just to keep up with the demands of training, and then once they get into their jobs, we've heard that the actual job itself, especially, we just know a lot more about, SEAL training and SEALs just because it's been widely publicized and we kind of dove into that. But that actually being a SEAL was harder than anything they ever went through in BUD/S. And so because of these physical demands and kind of, the alpha male mentality, there's been some steroid use. Now, is there, and you don't have to divulge anything, but I mean, have you ever come across that? I mean, is there any truth whatsoever to that statement?
Well, first thing, steroids is a really broadly used term.
Right.
I'm not an expert on steroid usage or other, on doping or any of the other methods out there. And I just think it's a bigger conversation. Somebody says, "Oh, he did steroids," and well, I mean, steroids aren't gonna, necessarily do what you think they're gonna do, and people respond to them differently. I mean,
right.
Some people take steroids and they put on 30 pounds. Some people take on steroids and they put on 5 pounds. Do you actually want to put on muscle mass? If what you want to do is put on muscle mass and you're taking a round of testosterone or GH, of growth hormone, okay, maybe that's going to happen. Or do you want to, improve your aerobic ability? Do you actually need to be doping? I think mostly for guys, like, to be honest, I mean, if they're taking, quote, quote, steroids, they're doing it because they want to be jacked and big, and they want to look good in their cut-off T-shirts with their beards, and get tanned and do some bench press.
Right.
Honestly, nobody's sitting back and thinking, okay, these are the demands of the combat environment. Here are the energy systems I need to be training. Here are the the different lifts I need to do to be structurally balanced and be proficient at my job. And okay, so and now I've reached my my potential with like good sleep and nutrition and programming. Okay, now I'm going to like supplement this with, some illicit drugs so that I can just perform as best as possible. And I mean, my opinion on that, like, I don't really care.
Right.
If you want to just be the best damn soldier you can be, there's no cheating, right? At the end of the day, the person who wins is the person that doesn't die. And so cheat all you want in that sport. I don't agree with that. I think long term it's really demanding in that community. And I think guys do get worn down. I don't think any 4 to 6 week block as a special forces operator, as a Navy SEAL, is as demanding as like BUD/S. I mean, you wouldn't be able to go that long doing that. So I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But I mean, yeah, guys do it. It's not really spoken about, and I mean, I don't really think anybody cares all that much. But it happens for sure.
Well, similar to the lack of, efficient like dietary protocols in the military is something else I read when just prepping for the show, was your viewpoint on the lack of movement that is taught to people in the military as well, and specifically like the squat pattern. This could even, similar to like Gray Cook stuff with FMS, or things you hear Starrett talk about with Mobility WOD. It overlays with the CrossFit for the masses type program, right? And it's that lack of movement is everywhere, not just in the squat, but in other movements as well. And why is that something that isn't taught in the military?
Takes too much time. So, I think it's a perceived fiscal restraint, right? There's just, there's not enough money. This is the system we have. if we try and teach all this other stuff, we just don't have enough time and money. And I mean, in some respects, okay, I get it. Like, at the end of the day, each soldier is a tool in a bigger machine, and it's very much a mission first mentality. It has to be. It's, at the tip of that spear is a life or death situation, and as long as they're effective there, I mean, we're not trying to make perfect super athletes. But that goes back to, I think that just goes back to not being creative enough as to the resources that are out there and what can be done with technology and, online education and all that. And the military cogs move very slowly, so there is things that can be changed. Things are in the works, but then it has to go through politics and bureaucracy. And then by the time you get your end product, it has, it's outdated and doesn't look anything like what the initial intent was.
And I mean, somewhere it has to fall on the individual too. Like, I mean, it's much sexier to go in there and start back squatting day one in a CrossFit gym or at Gold's than it is to go in and work on your squat movement. I mean, understandably so. But at some point, I think it would be on the individual to even just research, or there's a lot of online stuff to figure out proper movement. There's
also so much junk out there, and I totally agree. I look at myself. I spent the first 4 years in the military just kind of doing my own thing and researching, and it didn't really get me very far for the amount of work I put in. I did the best I could. I researched when I had time, but I couldn't paint the full picture. And, turn around, I get a coach. All of a sudden, my results are 3 times the speed they used to be. I feel better. I'm a heck of a lot stronger. I'm faster. I'm well-rounded. So yeah, part of it's on the individual, but, if that's the solution for everything, then the individual has quite a hefty amount of responsibility and workload on top of everything else they have to do, for their job, their family, etc. So I think the military, why have every individual out there take it on themselves when the organization as a whole can create a better culture around it that supports that, like, be efficient, right?
Right. So I know that you spoke about on the coaching side, you work a lot with the SF guys and who are prepping for that, as well as some CrossFit athletes. But I'm sure you also work with your average Joes, you could say, the people that are in the business world or just working. I mean, what does that look like different than a guy that's seeking you out to get ready for school?
Yeah, I mean, the initial process is similar. We still have the strategy session. We still do some initial testing, and then the program is just a little bit different for them based on that, right? If their goal is, man, I really respect your mindset and your level of fitness, and I'd like you to get me in, I'd like better energy and have good body composition and good libido and lift more in the gym and just feel good in my clothes. Well, I'm not going to have them do any rucksacking. Maybe they're not doing any swimming. They might not even be doing any running. Now they're just doing some sort of, maybe a bodybuilding type program with the supporting nutrition, and it looks completely different. So it's really just starting. What's the goal? Where are you starting? Where do you want to go? And then we just fill in the gap with what makes sense.
And do you still have them record some of their workouts for you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that every workout, or is that kind of the initial testing?
No.
Okay.
And initial testing for sure. That 2 weeks, they're videotaping everything, which is really quite easy with technology these days. It does not take very long at all. Maybe an extra minute. They take a video, swipe it into their Google Drive app on their cell phone. Done. And then we take a look at it, and then ongoing, every time we redo a test, we'll take a quick video, or we're doing something new, or sometimes they just want to take a video and say, hey, how's this? Like, this is how I feel. This is what it looks like. What do you think?
Cool. Well, me and Josh both adhere to some personal routines of our own, both morning and evening. Sometimes it basically just consists of some meditation, some PMR, journaling, light exercise. And we always just love hearing from successful people. Basically, what are some of your personal routines that you stick to?
Oh, man, it sounds like It sounds like you've read The Miracle Morning.
The Miracle Morning?
Yeah. Have you read it?
I have it. I've skimmed over it. Hal Elrod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good book. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I teach something similar in my my Warrior Morning program, my 6-phase snooze button solution course, and
Nice.
it's having it's having a morning routine. You know, that first hour of your day. You know, wake up, brush my teeth, splash some water in my face, get dressed. You know, go downstairs. I do a little bit of meditation. I do a little scribing. Great time to get some creativity going in the morning when, you know, cortisol's high, you know, no food in my gut yet, you know, blood's all up in the brain still.
Right.
And do a little bit of exercise. I might do a little bit of flow work for 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. Or go for a walk, get some sunshine, and then have some breakfast and get started with my day. But I try and be, you know, and some reading. You know, it's a great time to do a little bit of study, read a few pages out of whatever I'm working on, which kind of leads me into, you know, my messaging on social media for that day. And but I think that hour in the morning is really important. If you can make that consistent, if you can get up out of bed right away instead of hitting the snooze button. One, it makes that first hour 10 times more productive, and then that hour sets you up for a day that's much, much more productive as well.
And could you repeat that online course? We'd like to, I mean, we can go back and get it, but I'd love to put that in the show notes for everybody as well. Yeah,
sure. It's Warrior Morning Program, the 6-phase snooze button solution, and I'll give you guys a link to the private Facebook group. So there's a free Facebook group, and then I give out some information in there over time, and then there's an option to sign up for our full blown course as well.
Oh, great! And that's for people that, you know, they want to be a morning person, or they want to hop out of bed and have a little more productivity, find a morning routine, but they either in a rut, continue to fail, or just don't know how.
You got it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. We're all about that. I think any tools you can give people to kind of carve out that time and get in a routine where it's almost on autopilot in the morning. You know, it's just it's default. Is
and sleep's huge. Sleep's huge. I mean, it sets up. You know, Kirk Parsley talks about this a lot. You know, when you're sleep deprived, you're going to crave more sugar. You know, you're going to be tired. You're not going to have the energy, and you know, now you're craving sugar, and your insulin's spiking. Your energy's going up and down, and it makes it really, really tough to be consistent with your nutrition and training. But you can start with good quality sleep. Really set yourself up for success for the other two pieces.
And then, do you have an evening routine as well? Kind of calm, you know, wind down your day, kind of get prepared for bed.
Yeah. I mean, the program's broken up into 6 phases. The first one is just some pre-work and theory. The second one's actually light hygiene. The third one is a pre-bedtime routine, so kind of stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, calming down. The goal there being that people hit their head on the pillow and they're out in 5 to 10 minutes versus 30, 60, 90 minutes, 2 hours sometimes.
Oh, that's great. And is any of that included? So let's say someone wants to come to you for personal training, right? They're not a SF guy. They just want personal training, nutrition, and kind of all-around lifestyle coaching. Is there an option for kind of an all-in-one package?
Yeah, you know, we do the, for the one-on-one coaching, they also get access to that program. They can get access to our nutrition program, our mindset program. And, you know, if they're not ready for one-on-one yet and just not ready to make that kind of investment in themselves, we have a membership site as well, and they get access to those programs as well. So rather than the one-on-one coaching, they get some, you know, they get to choose from a variety of pre-made programs. They still get access to our Facebook group. They get access to weekly group calls with me. So there's different options based on, you know, what people, what kind of commitment people want to make and what kind of results they want to get. But
nice. Now, I know you mentioned the Miracle Morning, which I'll have to pick up a copy of that or just borrow Josh's since he hasn't touched it. But
I've touched it. I read it. I highlighted in it. Yeah.
There you go. What are some other books that you find yourself recommending the most?
Oh wow, I got a good answer for that one.
Yeah. Okay.
So top 10 reading list.
Sure.
Maximize Your Memory The Sports Gene by David Epstein, really good. Becoming a Supple Leopard, Body Flow, Freedom from Fear Reactivity, In Pursuit of Excellence, which is a whole book on mindset techniques from visualization to distraction control. The Obstacle is the Way, Choke, Turning Pro, Training at the Speed of Life, and Spec Ops, Case Studies in Special Operations Warfare Theory and Practice.
Sounds like a pretty solid list.
Yeah, no kidding. So
I've heard of a few of them, but
you're a pretty proficient reader then, huh?
I try.
Yeah.
I think I realized about 4 years after high school that I hadn't read any books, and then it just ramped up from there.
Is there a Wes Kennedy book coming out soon?
There is. Yeah,
Nice.
We're looking to have the first draft complete here in August. We're well through it at this point, and that's going to be on Getty Guys as prepared as possible for selection. Going to cover a whole bunch of stuff in there on building the ultimate tactical athlete. What a program might look like, nutrition, sleep, foot care, how to pack a ruck. A lot of the mistakes I see guys making that are easily avoided, and just all my thoughts basically that I've developed over the past 10 years on what I think guys should be doing in their training to prepare. So hopefully that would be out later next year.
cool.
And we'll have a landing page for that. I'll send you guys the link in a couple weeks, but we'll have a landing page for that where people can go and get on the early order list.
Yeah, definitely keep us up to date on that, because we'd love to do we can even do an article about it for sure.
Yeah,
to our website.
that'd be great.
So that'd be awesome. Kind of staying on your personal routine. What does your day of work look like? Do you chunk it up into really focused, short amounts of effort, or you kind of grind it out? Pick it up.
Well, up until recently, it was grinded out and double booked myself 7 days a week.
Oh my goodness.
I've recently been able to get away from that and have a much nicer routine now. So I wake up 7 o'clock. I have my my miracle morning routine for that first hour. I do a couple hours of marketing and sales. So that's either messaging, replying to messages on Facebook, to emails, putting my message out there on various social media, following up with strategy session application calls. I'll do an hour and a half of program design for clients. Then I've got an hour or so where I can fill it in with whatever. Go to the gym, do a couple new client intake calls, some strategy sessions in the afternoon, and another hour or two of client programming, and then call it an evening. So it's great. I'm doing what I love. I get to work with some really cool people, and and we're only growing, and we're only putting out more and better and more comprehensive content to help the guys prepare. So it's exciting. I'm really looking forward to this coming year.
When do you tackle your writing? Because I know you do a lot of writing for SoFrep, and you do T-Nation articles and some other outlets. Is that kind of a morning thing, or do you have a specific writing time of the day or week?
A little bit of my scribing would be part of that, and then just stuffing it in where inspiration arises and where I've got some time.
Cool. So you just kind of leave that open-ended. Yeah,
I find I don't really like sitting down and writing. Being forced, hey, I got to write an article now. I spend a lot of time listening. When I get a question that I haven't heard before, or I see a question come up a lot that I've yet to answer with either a video or a nice in-depth article, then that'll go on our list and I'll get working at putting something out for that specifically.
It's a good policy.
Yeah, I like it. Well, Wes, where can people follow you? Find more about? Oh, wow, I'm messing that up. Wow. Where can people follow you and find more about? Wow, Josh, just do it.
Let me clear.
Don't edit this out.
Yeah, right.
We'll put this at the very beginning.
Find out more about you.
There
you go.
I can ask myself if you like.
Third person.
Where can people follow you and find out more about you, Wes? Nailed it.
Bam. EliteTrainingPrograms.com would be the best place to go. Lots of free info on there. Check out EliteTrainingPrograms.com/spec ops videos for our 3 phases to becoming the ultimate special ops athlete. They can follow us on Facebook.com/EliteTrainingPrograms. And they can just search for me on Facebook as well. I get a lot of people that follow me or friend me on there and have some good conversations. And Instagram would be another good spot too, at either Wes-Ken or ETP Coach.
Awesome.
Great.
Just for kind of my own curiosity, are your assessments and the tests that you put people through available to the public, or is that a program that we have to sign up for?
Say that again.
So the testing that you put people through, like the initial assessment and the physical test, is that something that people would be available, that would be made available to the public, or is that once you're enrolled in your program?
Yeah, that's once they're enrolled in the program.
Okay,
Yep.
I gotcha.
So Wes, what's Jake and I earlier saw one of your workouts that you recommended for testing, which was I think we might tackle it later today or some point this week. The 5 rounds, 350 meter row, 12 burpee pull-ups, 8 wall walks. There may be some people out there that can't do the wall walks, but what's kind of a good workout people could do to test themselves, once this show's released?
Actually, one sec. I got a good one. So, exactly like you said there, some people can't do the wall walks. And so that's a test I really like to have tactical athletes go through. If they can't do it, we've got one that's a little bit different. Where is it here?
I'd imagine everything in there's a strict pull-up too, correct?
Yeah, I mean it's a kind of a jumping pull-up. So if they jump up and they can pull as they go. Yeah, so I'll do another one. I don't have it right in front of me now. It's essentially it's similar to that. It's I might be a little bit off in my numbers here, but 5 rounds for time of 350 meter row, 12 hand release push-ups, and 25 squats.
There you go, folks.
Aim for under 12 minutes or bust.
You're just not tactical yet.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, cool. Well, Wes, it's been great having you on the show, and we will definitely point people your direction, list everything that we talked about in the show notes, as well as your resources, where people can find the online coaching, and we'll obviously keep them updated on the book.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Thanks, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
We'll do it again.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Wes.
Cheers, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the 2Fit Podcast. This episode is brought to you by 2Fit USA, the sports nutrition company owned and operated by the 2Fit guys. To show our appreciation for you tuning into the podcast, we would like to give you a 10% off your entire order at 2fitusa.com. All of our products are sugar-free, paleo-friendly, gluten-free, non-GMO, and a whole list of other buzzwords. So hop on over to 2fitusa.com. Don't forget to use your promo code FIT1, that's FIT1 at checkout. We highly value and appreciate your feedback, so please leave a review about the products and the podcast at our website, 2fitusa.com, under the podcast and products pages. You can also leave a review on iTunes. Now, if we happen to read your review during one of our podcasts, you'll receive a 1-month free subscription of all 2Fit products. So write something noteworthy. If not, we probably won't read it anyway. So go leave a review, listen to the next episode, and until next time.